Good morning, students. Welcome to online classes for intermediate students. This is Prashasta Kumari. You are watching civics class. Today you are going to learn 4 topics from 5th lesson, that is Union Judiciary. So with these 4 topics, we are going to complete 5th lesson. So the 4 topics you are going to learn are judicial review, judicial activism, independence of judiciary, and Attorney General of India. Okay, so our subject is civics. So we are learning from 5th lesson, and these 4 topics we are going to learn today. Okay, so this is Supreme Court of India. So in your previous class itself, you have learnt about the Supreme Court of India, its powers and functions. So this Supreme Court of India is part of Union Judiciary. So Union Judiciary is an organ of Union government. Government consists of 3 organs. Those are legislature, executive and judiciary. Okay, so with this Supreme Court and its related topics, we are going to complete the whole Union government topics. Okay, so let us know about the organization of the judicial system in India once again. So we are having integrated judiciary. So though we are having federal system of government, we are not having double system of courts. We are having only single system of courts that can be called as integrated judiciary. So at the top we are having Supreme Court of India, and at state level we are having high courts, and at district levels we are having subordinate courts as civil courts, criminal courts and other courts. So this is the organization of judicial system in our country. Okay, so today you are going to learn the first topic is judicial review. So what is judicial review means? This is the most important power of the Supreme Court. So in your previous class, you have learnt about ordinary powers of Supreme Court. That means they are original jurisdiction, advisory jurisdiction, appellate jurisdiction, court of record, writ jurisdiction. So these powers you have learnt in your previous session as the powers or functions of Supreme Court. So this is also a very important power that is called as judicial review. So according to judicial review, the Supreme Court and high courts can declare any law as unconstitutional when it is not according to the Constitution. Okay, so that is the power of judicial review. So judicial review is the most important power of the Supreme Court, and the Article 13 empowers the Supreme Court to exercise judicial review. So judicial review power was given to the Supreme Court according to Article 13. Okay, so it is the power of the Supreme Court and High Courts to examine the constitutional validity of the legislative enactments and executive actions of both central and state governments and declare them as null and void or ultra vires or invalid if they are found not according to the Constitution. So according to judicial review, the Supreme Court of India or any high court can examine, can review the laws of both union government and state governments. Okay, executive actions and legislative enactments of both central and state governments and declare them as unconstitutional and declare them as null and void and declare them as ultra vires. That means invalid. Okay, when they are declared as invalid means if they are not according to the Constitution. Okay, so that is the power of the judicial review. Okay, and why judicial review was given to judiciary? Okay, so judicial review power was given to judiciary. Why? Because means the Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution. The Supreme Court can also be called as a guardian of the Constitution. So it is the responsibility of the Supreme Court to safeguard our Constitution. Okay, so it has to uphold the supremacy of the Constitution. So that is why this judicial review was given to Supreme Court. That means this Supreme Court has to uphold the supremacy of the Constitution. So Constitution can be called as supreme law of our country. So this should be safeguarded. This should be protected by only Supreme Court or by judiciary of our country. So it has to protect the fundamental rights of the citizens. Okay. So another responsibility of Supreme Court is to protect fundamental rights. So fundamental rights are granted in our Constitution to all Indian citizens. They are Six fundamental rights: right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, right to constitutional remedy. So these are the six fundamental rights which are enjoyed by all the Indian citizens. But when in danger or when a violation occurs regarding the enjoyment of the fundamental rights, then the Supreme Court or then the judiciary can issue writs to safeguard the fundamental rights of the citizen. So those are habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, certiorari, quo warranto. These are the 5 kinds of writs which can be issued by the Supreme Court and also High Courts to safeguard fundamental rights of the citizen. So regarding these writs, you have learnt in your previous class itself. So it is the final interpreter of the Constitution. So one more responsibility of the Supreme Court is it is the final interpreter of the Constitution. That means interpreter means giving meaning. So all constitutional provisions meaning will be given by the Supreme Court. So the meaning given by the interpretation given by the Supreme Court can be the final. So it is the final interpreter of the Constitution. So these are the reasons why judicial review was granted to judiciary. Okay. Next, coming to the judicial review on what ground. So judicial review will be conducted by the judiciary on what grounds. So which laws can be reviewed? Okay, so the Supreme Court reviews all legislations, union and state in India, as well as past as well as future. Okay, according to this power, it can declare a law unconstitutional if it is inconsistent with any of the provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. So it reviews on the ground. So Part 3 of the Constitution consists of fundamental rights of Indian citizens. Okay, so violation of fundamental rights, violation of federal distribution of powers, decisions of public sector undertakings, and constitutional amendments. So on what grounds judicial review will be conducted means if any law violates fundamental rights of the Indian citizen. So those laws can be declared as null and void. Those laws can be declared as invalid. Okay, so if any law violates federal distribution of powers. So federal distribution of powers has been done in the Constitution in 3 lists. That is union list, state list and concurrent list. So if any violation occurs in this distribution of legislative powers, so then also those laws can also be declared as invalid. And regarding the decisions of public sector undertaking, so if any decision is against the Constitution, so those decisions of the public sector undertakings will also be declared as invalid. So public sector undertakings are also government organizations. Why? Because means they are getting funds from union government as well as state governments. And constitutional amendments. So amendments, the constitutional amendments which are against the constitutional provisions, those amendments can also be declared as invalid, okay, or null and void. So these are the grounds on which judicial review will be conducted by judiciary, by the Supreme Court of India. Okay. And next, coming to the review on its own judgment. Supreme Court of India can conduct review on its own judgments. That means its own judgments can be reversed. Its own judgments can be nullified or cancelled. Its own judgments can be modified. Its own judgments can be upholded. Okay. So the Supreme Court is empowered to review its own judgments according to the changing conditions. So according to the changing conditions, according to the time, according to the situations, okay, the Supreme Court of India can change its own judgments. So it can uphold or modify or nullify its previous judgments. So its previous judgments can be upholded or modified or changed or nullified or cancelled. Okay, though there are similar cases. Okay, for instance, in Golaknath case versus State of Punjab in 1967, its judgment is that Parliament has no power to amend any provisions of the fundamental rights of Indian citizens. So, when the case is Golaknath case in State versus State of Punjab in 1967, the Supreme Court of India gave judgment as the Parliament has no power to amend any provisions of the fundamental rights of Indian citizen. So in the case of Golaknath, the Supreme Court of India judgment is like that. But it reversed this judgment in 1973 in the Keshavananda Bharati case. So in 1973, the same Supreme Court gave its judgment in reversed. Okay, so that means the judgment which was given in Golaknath case in 1967 was reversed in the case of Keshavananda Bharati case in 1973. That Parliament is having power to amend any provisions of the fundamental rights of the citizens, any provisions of the constitution, but only one condition is there. That condition is it cannot change, it cannot amend the basic ideals or the fundamental ideals of the constitution. That means in Golaknath case, the judgment of Supreme Court is one kind, and in Keshavananda Bharati case, the same judgment is reversed. Okay, so like this, some other cases also happened in our country in the history of Supreme Court. Similarly, in Maneka Gandhi passport case in 1978 and Minerva Mill versus Union of India case 1980, it reversed its previous judgment. The Supreme Court of India reversed its own judgments. Okay, so this is about the review on its own judgments. Okay, coming to the next topic, that is judicial activism. Okay, so nowadays judiciary is very active and it is competing with the other two organs of the government. They are legislature and executive. So let us know about what is judicial activism. So it is a policy making by judiciary in competition with legislature and executive organs of the government. Generally, policy making is the duty of legislature and implementation is by the executive organ of the government. But whereas here judiciary is making policies, that means the judiciary is taking up the activities, taking up the responsibilities of legislature and executive. So that can be called as judicial activism. So nowadays judiciary is very active. So judiciary traditionally confined to responding to cases brought before it, but now it began to consider many cases merely on the basis of newspaper reports and postal complaints received by the court. So generally, traditionally, in previous days, judiciary takes up cases, those which are filed in the court, but it does not bother about the other things, other cases. Okay, so but nowadays it began to consider many cases merely on the basis of newspaper reports and postal complaints received by the court. So if the court feels that injustice has been done, so if any article is regarding the injustice that happened in our country or happened to any one person, any organization, so those cases can directly taken up by the Supreme Court. So these can by this we can say that judiciary is very active. Okay, most of the cases of judicial activism occurred through public interest litigations on public health, child labor, environment, corruption, etc. So judicial activism was implemented through public interest litigation. So what is public interest litigations means? These are the cases which are filed in the Supreme Court of India on behalf of victim. Okay, so the victim is not directly approaching the court. So on behalf of the victim who is incapable, those persons who are social service oriented persons, so will file a case on behalf of the victim, or some NGOs or non-governmental organizations, some voluntary organizations will also file the cases on behalf of those victims. Okay, so regarding public health, child labor, environment, corruption. So these cases can be called as public interest litigations. Okay. So the areas of judicial activism through public interest litigations in India. So these cases, the public interest litigation cases, are mainly on those areas which are regarding the prison conditions. So the cases are regarding prison conditions and child labor cases, environmental issue cases, forest cases, and rights of the minorities, women and children, disabled persons, illiterate and poor sections of society cases. So these are the areas on which public interest litigations cases occur in our country. Okay, so let us see the procedure to file a public interest litigation in Supreme Court of India. So this is a very easy process. Through a simple letter itself, we can file a public interest litigation cases. So the victim can file a writ petition through a simple letter written on the postcard. So those cases can also be taken up by the Supreme Court as PIL cases, okay, public interest litigation cases. So PIL is introduced by Chief Justice of India, P.N. Bhagavati in 1986 in India. So actually PIL was originated in America, but this PIL system or public interest litigation cases also taken up, also borrowed from by our country by Chief Justice P.N. Bhagavati. So he was the first introducer of PIL cases in our country in 1986. So it is intended to make the judicial system accessible to the socially and economically lower sections of the people. Generally, socially and economically backward sections of the people will not come forward to approach the courts or to file cases in the courts when injustice has been done to them. Okay, so they will not come forward to file a case. So this PIL is very useful to such people. Okay, so it facilitates any person or group to approach the Supreme Court and High Courts for the redressal of grievances on behalf of the victim or victims who are incapable of approaching the court. So these PIL cases or public interest litigation cases can be filed by any person or group of persons on behalf of the victim or victims who are incapable, who cannot approach, who are not ready to approach the courts for the injustice being done to them. So for the redressal of grievances or for the removal of their problems, some other person or some group or some NGO, non-governmental organization will come forward to file a case on behalf of the victim or victim. So that is public interest litigation. Okay, so public interest litigation. So the Indian Constitution allows any public spirited person, NGO or a public interest law firm to file a case on behalf of a group of persons whose rights are affected. The court can also act on its own motion. So a PIL must be filed against government authorities, but private parties can also be included as co-respondents. So cases in which a PIL can be filed include environmental degradation, violation of basic rights of the poor, content or conduct of government policy, to compel municipal authorities to perform a public duty, so violation of religious rights or other basic fundamental rights. So these are the areas where public interest litigation cases may be filed in our country. Okay. So next, importance of public interest litigation. So why this public interest litigation is very important means it gives a wider description to the right to equality, life and personality, which is guaranteed under Part 3 of the Constitution of India. So Part 3 of the Constitution of India guarantees fundamental rights. So in those fundamental rights, right to equality, life and personality are guaranteed by our Constitution. So they can be safeguarded and they can be protected by this PIL. Okay, so it has introduced some kinds of reliefs or remedies under the writ jurisdiction. So by the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of India and High Courts, these fundamental rights or right to equality and life and personality can be safeguarded. And it also functions as an effective instrument for changes in the society or social welfare through PIL. Any public or person can seek remedy on behalf of the oppressed class by introducing a PIL. So this is the importance of public interest litigation in our country. This is very useful for socially and economically backward people and those who are not, who are incapable of approaching the courts. Okay, so that is why nowadays judiciary became very active or judicial activism. Okay, so merits of judicial activism. So let us see what are the merits of judicial activism. So it democratized the judicial system by giving access to the courts not only to the individuals but also to groups. So judicial activism through PIL, it gave access to the courts not only to the individuals but also to groups. So individuals can approach courts and also groups can also approach the courts. So it has enforced executive accountability. So through PIL, in any case can be filed in the Supreme Court of India. So that is why it made, so okay, that means that the judiciary made the executive more accountable. Okay, so next it made the electoral system more free and fair. So generally during elections, corruption will be done. Okay, so money will be distributed and some other illegal activities will be conducted generally in some areas or in some places. Okay, so this system or this judicial activism is making that electoral system is more free and fair. That means all these corrupted activities, illegal activities can be controlled, can be restricted by judicial activism. Okay, it made the election candidates to submit affidavits disclosing their assets, liabilities, educational qualifications, criminal record, etc. So this enabled the voters to elect better candidates. So due to judicial activism only, submission of affidavits happened. So what are affidavits means? Disclosing their assets. So the contestants of elections has to disclose their assets, that means their properties, and their liabilities, that means their loans, their educational qualifications, their criminal record should be disclosed. So okay, so these enabled the voters to elect better candidates. Okay, so after disclosing all these matters, so the voter is having choice to better a best candidate during elections. Okay, so he can vote to the best candidate. So these are the merits of judicial activism. So let us see the demerits of judicial activism. So there are some demerits because of judicial activism. So let us see what are they. So it blurred the line of distinction between the executive and legislature on one hand and the judiciary on the other hand. So generally government consists of three organs. So one is legislature, executive, and third one is judiciary. So these three organs are having different powers. So every organ is exercising its own power. So because of judicial activism, the line of distinction, okay, so the line of distinction or the separation of powers has been blurred. That means has been cancelled. Okay, so because of this judicial activism, that means this judiciary is interfering in the affairs of both the legislature and executive. So that is one demerit, and it led to the worsening of relations and balance among the three organs of the government. So generally harmonious relation should be maintained among the three organs of the government. So because of this judicial activism, that harmonious relations was worsened. Okay, because of the interference of judiciary in legislature and executive affairs, so the relationship among these three organs became worse. Okay, so it is against the principle of democracy that respecting the powers and jurisdictions of the other organs of the government. So only because of this judicial activism, the respecting the powers and jurisdictions of the other organs became it is against the principle of the democracy. That means because of interference, because of checking the laws which were made by the legislature and which are implemented by the executive, by the judiciary, and because of judicial activism and all these because of all these things, that means the democratic principle of respecting the powers and jurisdiction has been disturbed. Okay, these are the demerits of judicial activism. Okay, so let us come to the third topic of today. So that is independence of judiciary. Okay, judiciary is enjoying independence. So what kind of independence is it enjoying? Let us learn. So the independence of judiciary does not mean the absence of accountability. Okay, so the judiciary is having judicial review and nobody can give instructions or nobody can restrict the judiciary. Okay, so but it is accountable to the Constitution. So though other two organs, legislature and executive, cannot control judiciary, but this judiciary is accountable to the Constitution. That means it does not mean the absence of accountability. So judiciary is also accountable to the Constitution. So it is a part of the political structure of the country and accountable to the Constitution. Okay, so the legislative and executive organs of the government cannot interfere in the work of the judiciary. So every organ of the government are having different powers, separate powers and functions. But this judiciary can interfere in the affairs of legislature and executive. It can check the affairs of legislature and executive, but the legislature and executive organs cannot check the affairs, cannot interfere in the work of the judiciary. So that is the independence of the judiciary. Okay. So measures ensuring for independence of judiciary. So there are some measures, there are some conditions where this judiciary is enjoying its independence. Okay. So the legislative organ of the government does not involve in the process of appointment of the judges. So, okay, appointment of the judges will be made by the executive organ of the government, not by the legislature, and they will be appointed based on their experience as an advocate or well versed in law. So, in your previous class, you have learnt about the qualifications of the Supreme Court judge. So, if a judge is if a person is acted, or if a person worked for 5 years as a judge in High Court, so then he is eligible to be appointed as Supreme Court judge. And if a person works as an advocate in High Court for continuously 10 years, then also he is eligible to be appointed as Supreme Court judge. And if he is well versed in law, in the opinion of the president also, he can be appointed by the President of India as Supreme Court judge. So these are the qualifications. Okay, only according to the qualifications only they will be appointed, not by the recommendation or not by some other reason. Okay, so the judges have a fixed tenure. They may be removed as per the procedure in the constitution, that is impeachment in parliament. So the judges of the Supreme Court will continue in their office till the attainment of age 65 years. So until then they can't be removed, and the removal procedure is a very difficult and complicated process. Okay, so though they are appointed by the President of India, the removal process will be conducted in the parliament, both houses. So that can be called as an impeachment process, and that impeachment resolution should be passed or should be approved by both the houses of the parliament by two-thirds majority. Okay, so then only a Supreme Court judge can be removed. Okay, so the judiciary is not financially independent, or salaries and allowances on legislative and executive organs of the government. So here also regarding the salaries and allowances also, it is not dependent. That means judiciary is not dependent on legislative organ or executive organ of the government. So it is declared, or it is decided by the constitution of our country. And the actions and decisions of the judges are immune from personal criticism. The judiciary has the power to penalize those who are found guilty as contempt of court. So no person, no Indian citizen can criticize the actions or can criticize the judgments of the Supreme Court. Okay, Supreme Court judge also. Okay, so if that happens, then the Supreme Court or the judiciary has power to penalize those persons, and they can be considered as a contempt of court. Okay, they can be punished also. Next one is the service of the judges is secured. No judge can be removed except by impeachment only on the grounds of proved misbehavior or incapacity. Okay, the service of the judges is secured. So once he is appointed as a Supreme Court judge, the removal procedure is a very difficult procedure, and that procedure can be called as a impeachment. So it can be conducted in both the houses of the parliament only on the grounds of proved misbehavior or incapacity. Okay, so next one is the judiciary is no way subordinate to the legislative and executive organs of the government, but its decisions are binding on them. Okay, so the three organs are legislature, executive and judiciary. But the legislative and executive organs' decisions can be reversed or can be cancelled by the judiciary. But the decisions of judiciary should be obeyed by legislative and executive organs of the government. So this shows the superiority of the third organ or the judiciary of the government on legislature and executive organs of the government. So these are the measures of judiciary on which it can be said that it is enjoying the independence of judiciary. Okay. Next and last topic is Attorney General of India. So who is Attorney General of India and what are his powers and functions? Let us learn. So K.K. Venugopal. So he is the Attorney General of India. So the present Attorney General of India was K.K. Venugopal. Okay. So who is Attorney General of India means? So according to Article 76, provide the office of Attorney General for India. So Attorney General is the legal advisor. He is the first law officer of our country. Okay. So he is the highest law officer in the country. He is the first legal officer of Government of India. So he is the first legal advisor to the Government of India, to the President or to Prime Minister. Okay, so he is appointed by the President. So Attorney General of India is appointed by the President of India. Okay, so he must be qualified to be appointed a judge of the Supreme Court. The qualifications of Attorney General are equal to the qualifications of Supreme Court. Okay, and next, term of office is not fixed. He held office during the pleasure of the President. He may also quit office by submitting his resignation to the President. So he is appointed, or the Attorney General of India can be appointed by the President of India. He can continue his office till the enjoyment of the pleasure of the President. Okay, so he can be continued as long as the President is pleased by his works or his functions. He may also quit office by submitting his resignation to the President. So voluntarily he can also quit by submitting a resignation letter to the President of India. Okay, he resigned when the government resigns or replaced as he is appointed on its advice. So when the government resigns, so then also he has to resign. Why? Because means the government itself appointed that person or Attorney General of India. So that is why if government changes, the Attorney General will also changed or will also replaced by another person. So this is a small introduction of Attorney General of India. So let us learn about his powers and functions or qualifications of Attorney General of India. Okay, the qualifications of Attorney General India are same as the qualifications of Supreme Court Judge. Okay, the first qualification is he must be a citizen of India. So the first qualification is he must be a citizen of India and he must have served as a judge in high courts for a period of at least 5 years. Okay, so Attorney General of India should also work for 5 years as a judge in any one high court or more than one high courts for a period of continuously 5 years. Okay, so next one is he must have served as an advocate in high courts for a period of at least 10 years. So as a judge, he has to work for 5 years and as an advocate, he has to work for 10 years in any one high court or more than one high court continuously. Okay, so that is another qualification, and he must be a distinguished jurist in the opinion of the President of India. So though he does not work as a judge of high court for 5 years or advocate of a high court for 10 years, he can be appointed as Attorney General of India. So when he is a distinguished jurist in the opinion of the President of India. So these are the qualifications of Attorney General of India as well as Judge of the Supreme Court. Okay, so next is powers and functions. Powers and functions of Attorney General of India. So these are the powers and functions. The Attorney General of India render advice to the Union Government on legal matters which are referred to him by the President of India. So he is the first legal advisor, first law officer to our country. That is why he will give legal advisors, and all legal matters will be consulted with the Attorney General of India by the President of India. Okay, next he performs the functions assigned to him by the President of India from time to time. So whatever work is assigned, whatever work is given by the President of India will be done by the Attorney General of India. So he discharges the functions conferred on him by the Constitution. So these are the powers and functions which should be performed by the Attorney General of India, which are mentioned in the Constitution. So he will also perform all these functions, and he appears in Supreme Court or any High Court on behalf of the Union government in all cases. So he can also appear in Supreme Court as well as High Court. So when the cases are regarding the Union government, okay, so as a representative of Union government, he will attend or he will appear in the Supreme Court and also in High Courts when the cases are going on. Okay, so he enjoys the right to attend and speak in the parliament meetings but does not have voting right. So he can also attend the parliament sessions, both Lok Sabha sessions and Rajya Sabha sessions, and he can also speak in the parliament sessions, but he is not having right to vote. Okay, so for the bills, so after the discussion on the bills, voting will be conducted, and for some other resolutions also voting will be conducted. So during that voting period, so he can't enjoy that voting right. He cannot participate in that voting. So these are the powers and functions of Attorney General of India. Okay, so we have come to the last segment of our class, that is assignment. So these are the very important questions from today's topics, and these are the questions which you may get in your public examination. So all of you take your notebooks and write down and note down all these questions and prepare notes for all these questions by your own, and you can get answers for all these questions from this class itself. You go through this class or you watch this video again and again. You prepare notes for all these questions and learn them. Okay, so the first question is, describe judicial review. Okay, the first question is, describe judicial review. So you have learned that judicial review is the special power given to Supreme Court of India. According to judicial review, it can declare any law as unconstitutional if it is found that it is not according to the constitution. Okay, so this question will be given for 5 marks, and it is very important question. And second one is, describe judicial activism in India. Describe judicial activism in India. Okay, so this question will be given for 2 marks or for 5 marks. Okay, so third one is, what is mean by public interest litigation? Okay, so what is mean by public interest litigation? And this question will be given for 5 marks, and this is also very important question. Okay, so this will be given for 5 marks. And fourth one is, what are the powers and functions of the Attorney General of India? Okay, so what are the powers and functions of the Attorney General of India? So now itself we have discussed the powers and functions of the Attorney General of India. So this question will be given for 5 marks. Okay, so this is also very, very important question. And fifth one is, what is the meaning of independence of judiciary? Okay, so what is the meaning of independence of judiciary, and how is it ensured by the Constitution? How is it ensured by the Constitution? So this question also, this topic also we have discussed in this class itself. Okay, so this question may be given for 5 marks. Okay, so the last question from today's topic. So, PIL. Okay, so PIL is public interest litigation, and this question can be given for 2 marks also. Okay, so it is given for either 5 marks or for 2 marks. Okay, so these are the very important questions which you may get in your public examinations. Okay. I want to recollect all the topics which you have learned today. So we have learned 4 topics today: judicial review, judicial activism, and independence of judiciary, and Attorney General of India. Okay. So with these 4 topics, we have completed this lesson. So in our previous session, you have learned the powers and functions of the Supreme Court. Okay. So today you learned about judicial review. Okay. So organization of the judicial system in India and judicial review. Okay, so what is judicial review means? It is the power of the most important power of the Supreme Court to declare any law as unconstitutional when it is found that it is not according to the Constitution. Okay, and why judicial review was given to Supreme Court means because the Supreme Court is a guardian of the Constitution. It has to uphold the supremacy of the Constitution. It has to protect the fundamental rights of the citizens, and it is the final interpreter of the Constitution. Okay, so these are the 6 fundamental rights which are enjoyed by Indian citizens, and these should be protected by the judiciary. Okay, so on which judicial review is conducted. Okay, on the violation of fundamental rights, on the violation of federal distribution of powers, on the decisions of public sector undertakings, and on constitutional amendments, judicial review will be conducted. Okay, so judicial review will be conducted on its own judgments. Okay, the Supreme Court can review its own judgments. So some cases are there: Golaknath case, Keshavananda Bharati case, Maneka Gandhi passport case, Minerva Mills versus Union of India case. So in these cases, Supreme Court reverses its own judgments. Okay, so next one is judicial activism. So nowadays, judiciary is very active and it is competing with the other 2 organs of the government, that is legislature and executive, in policy making. So judicial activism is occurring through public interest litigations. Okay, so these are the cases which can be filed by on behalf of any person, on behalf of any victim or victims. Okay, so these are the areas in India on which public interest litigations are occurring: prison conditions or condition cases, child labor cases, environmental issues cases, forest and rights of minorities, women and children, disabled persons, illiterate and poor sections of society. Okay, so next, this bill is introduced in our country by Chief Justice of India P.N. Bhagavati in 1986 in our country. And so through a postcard itself, we can file a writ petition, or we can file this public interest litigation. The Supreme Court and High Courts will take up those cases. Okay, so it is very important. That means public interest litigation is very important in safeguarding the right to equality, life and personality, which are guaranteed in the 3rd part of the Constitution. That means in fundamental rights of citizens. Okay, so this is an effective instrument for changing the society or for the social welfare in our country. Okay, there are some merits of judicial activism. That means it is making executive more accountable, and it is controlling electoral system or during elections, illegal activities or corruptions, and it is making election candidates to submit affidavits. And there are some demerits also. So it is cancelling the line of distinction between among the 3 organs of the government, and it is against the principle of democracy, and it is worsening the balance among the or harmony relations among the 3 organs of the government. Okay, so next one is independence of judiciary. So judiciary is enjoying independence And these are the measures which ensure the independence of judiciary. And Attorney General of India. So K.K. Venugopal is the present Attorney General of India. So he can be called as a first law officer in the country, and he is the legal officer, legal advisor to the government of India. He is appointed by the president, and he will continue in his office till the pleasure of the president or till the government runs. And these are the qualifications. The qualifications of Attorney General of India are same as qualifications of Supreme Court. He is equal to Supreme Court judge. Okay, so these are the powers and functions of the Attorney General of India, and these are the questions which I have given for your assignment today. And now we are concluding this session. Okay, so thank you one and all.